Now, the Western world was arrogant about not listening to India on terrorism, says former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair in an interview to NDTV's group editor Barkhat Dutt. Speaking on the war on terror and how it's become a global threat, Blair admits the West should have listened to India's warnings more.
For the part of the world I come from, which is South Asia, which is today at the epicenter of so many of these debates, with Pakistan and Afghanistan being really serious issues for India, you write in your book about how you had, in a sense, perhaps underestimated the threat of radical extremist Islam, and you only grew to understand it over the years. Do you think that there was this one turning point that made you understand it, or do you think that happened to you only after you stepped down, in a sense, from office?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's been a process over time, but I also think, you know, something I used to say towards the end of my premiership was we should have listened to India more. You know, we should have watched what was happening there and taken more account of it. And I'm afraid rather kind of arrogantly, actually, the West sort of thought, well, maybe it's something to do with India, and so, you know, it's a far-off place and we don't quite understand it and so on. But actually, I think towards the end of my premiership, and even more so after leaving, I think it is a global movement. It actually does threaten us all, and it does have to be confronted and defeated in a quite different way from any conventional war we've fought before.
India feels, and Indians feel, that it took 9/11 to make the world acknowledge what India had been saying all along. And to that extent, India also believes, and this is irrespective of which government is in power, that the world has not responded firmly enough to Pakistan. Now, you make a reference in your book to your meeting with General Musharraf, to terror groups operating out of Pakistan, but you do draw a distinction between terror emanating from Pakistan and the entire Pakistan establishment being complicit in that. Do you, in a sense, think that's too benign a reading in the light of some of the things we've seen after the Bombay attacks?
That's difficult to answer. I mean, look, you know, I have many Pakistani friends and many people I talk to there.
And so do I.
And who I believe, incidentally, completely abhor this terrorism and want to defeat it. I think it's more to do with the fact that this strain of extremism within Islam, based on a perversion of Islam, but within it, I think what I learned from the Indian experience in the end, and I think you're right in saying it, I'm afraid it took 9/11 for us to wake up to this, is that you can't hide away from the fact that this is actually an element within Islam. It may be based on a perversion of it, but it's there. And what it does is, it's not merely that it expresses itself in acts of terrorism, it expresses itself in a narrative of extremism about society and about relations between countries and people of different faiths, which is, I think, fundamental and has to be confronted. Now, I think that narrative, unfortunately, is there as a strain within Pakistani society.